Welcome to War Bios, where we delve into the most pivotal battles in history, dissecting the strategic decisions, tactical innovations, and human elements that shaped their outcomes. Today, we're heading back to the American Civil War to explore one of its most fascinating and complex engagements, the Battle of Chancellorsville, fought in May 1863. This battle is a masterclass in clever maneuvering, bold decision-making, and the devastating consequences of miscalculation. The year 1863 was a critical juncture in the American Civil War. The Confederacy, despite its defeats at Antietam in September 1862 and Fredericksburg in December of the same year, remained a formidable foe. General Robert E. Spacious Lee, commander of the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia, had proven himself to be a brilliant tactician, capable of extracting victories from the jaws of defeat. In the spring of 1863, the Union Army of the Potomac, under the command of General Joseph Hooker, was poised to launch a new campaign against Lee's army. The strategic situation was fraught with tension. The Rappahannock River, which flowed gently through the Virginia countryside, marked the boundary between the two armies. It was against this backdrop that General Hooker devised a plan to outmaneuver Lee's army by crossing the Rappahannock River upstream from Fredericksburg and then marching south to attack the Confederate forces from behind. This bold plan, aimed at exploiting the weaknesses of Lee's defensive positions, seemed poised to deliver a crushing blow to the Confederacy. However, General Lee was not one to underestimate his opponents or the challenges that lay ahead. He had been observing Hooker's movements with great interest and had begun to formulate a counter-strategy of his own. Lee's army, though outnumbered, was well entrenched in its defensive positions around Fredericksburg, with the Rappahannock River serving as a natural barrier against any Union advances. The Confederacy saw the upcoming battle as an opportunity to prove its mettle and demonstrate that it could still inflict significant damage on the Union army, despite being outnumbered and outgunned. Meanwhile, the Union Army viewed the impending engagement as a chance to finally break through Lee's defenses and deal a decisive blow to the Confederate war effort. In the weeks leading up to the battle, both armies engaged in a series of skirmishes and reconnaissance missions, each side probing the other's defenses and searching for weaknesses to exploit. The Union Army, with its superior numbers and firepower, seemed confident of its ability to overpower Lee's forces, while the Confederates, buoyed by their previous victories, remained undaunted by the odds against them. The town of Chancellorsville, a small but strategic crossroads located about 10 miles west of Fredericksburg, would soon become the focal point of this epic struggle. The area was characterized by dense forests, rolling hills, and winding streams, all of which would play a significant role in the battle that was to come. The Union Army, with its superior numbers and firepower, seemed poised to deliver a crushing blow to the Confederacy, while General Lee, undaunted by the odds against him, was preparing to unleash a daring plan of his own. One that would test the mettle of both armies and forever change the course of the war. And so, with the battle lines drawn and the fate of the nation hanging in the balance, we find ourselves on the cusp of a military drama that will unfold with all the unpredictability of war. As General Robert E. Lee prepared to face off against General Joseph Hooker's Army of the Potomac, he was well aware of the numerical superiority of his opponent. The Union Army boasted over 130,000 troops, while Lee's forces numbered around 60,000. However, Lee had a distinct advantage in terms of familiarity with the terrain and the element of surprise. Lee decided to split his army, leaving a small force under General Jubal Early to hold off the Union Army at Fredericksburg, while he marched the bulk of his troops westward to confront Hooker's main body. This bold decision was made possible by Lee's trust in his subordinate commanders and his confidence in the defensive positions around Fredericksburg. By dividing his forces, Lee aimed to exploit the weaknesses in Hooker's plan and catch him off guard. As Lee's army marched towards Chancellorsville, they traversed through dense forests and rugged terrain, using the cover of night to conceal their movements. Meanwhile, Hooker's army was advancing cautiously, probing the Confederate defenses and searching for a weak point to attack. The Union commander was aware of the potential for a Confederate flanking maneuver, but seemed hesitant to take decisive action. On April 30, 1863, Hooker's army crossed the Rappahannock River at Kelly's Ford and Germanna Ford, marking the beginning of the Battle of Chancellorsville. As the Union troops advanced towards the town, they encountered scattered resistance from Confederate skirmishers. However, Lee's main force was still hidden from view, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment arrived on May 1, when General Stonewall Jackson, one of Lee's most trusted subordinates, launched a surprise attack on Hooker's right flank. Jackson's corps, consisting of over 28,000 troops, swept through the dense woods and caught the Union Army off guard. The Confederates exploited the weak point in Hooker's line, pushing back the Union troops and creating chaos in their ranks. As the battle raged on, General James Ewell Brown Stewart's cavalry played a crucial role in screening Jackson's flanking maneuver, preventing the Union Army from detecting the movement of Confederate troops. Meanwhile, General Fitzhugh Lee's cavalry brigade launched a series of daring raids against Hooker's supply lines, disrupting the flow of ammunition and provisions to the Union Army. Despite being caught off guard, the Union Army managed to regroup and launch a series of counterattacks. However, these efforts were ultimately repelled by the Confederate forces, who held their ground tenaciously. As the sun began to set on May 1st, Hooker's army was in disarray, with its right flank exposed and its supply lines under threat. The following day, Jackson's corps continued to push forward, driving the Union troops back towards the Rappahannock River. However, in a tragic turn of events, Jackson was accidentally shot by his own men during a reconnaissance mission on the evening of May 2nd. The loss of their beloved commander sent shockwaves through the Confederate ranks, but Lee remained resolute, knowing that the battle was far from over. Lee's decision to split his army and launch a surprise attack on the Union Army's right flank. The Confederate forces, despite being outnumbered, have gained the upper hand, thanks to Lee's strategic brilliance and the bravery of his troops. The Union Army, under General Joseph Hooker, is in disarray, with its right flank exposed and its supply lines under threat. One of the most critical events of the battle took place on the morning of May 3rd, when Confederate artillery opened fire on the Union positions near the Chancellor House. The Union troops, who had been reinforced overnight, were caught off guard by the intense bombardment, which lasted for several hours. The artillery fire was so intense that it set the surrounding woods ablaze, causing widespread destruction and chaos. As the Confederate artillery pounded the Union positions, General Lee launched a series of infantry assaults against the Union lines. The fighting was fierce and intense, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. However, the Confederates slowly began to gain ground, pushing the Union troops back towards the Rappahannock River. Meanwhile, General James Ewell Brown Stewart's cavalry continued to play a crucial role in the battle, screening the Confederate infantry and preventing the Union Army from launching a counterattack. Stewart's cavalry also launched a series of raids against the Union supply lines, disrupting the flow of ammunition and provisions to the Union Army. As the day wore on, the Union Army became increasingly disorganized, with units becoming separated and commanders losing control of their troops. General Hooker, who had been wounded earlier in the battle, was forced to retreat his army across the Rappahannock River, abandoning many of his wounded and supplies. The Confederate victory at Chancellorsville was a significant turning point in the war, as it gave Lee's army a much-needed boost in morale and momentum. The battle also marked a personal triumph for Lee, who had outmaneuvered and outfought his opponent despite being outnumbered. However, the victory came at a great cost, as the Confederates suffered over 13,000 casualties, including many high-ranking officers. The battle marked a shift in momentum in favor of the Confederacy, which would go on to win several more battles in the coming months. However, the Union Army would eventually regroup and launch a series of counterattacks, ultimately leading to the defeat of the Confederacy. That's all for today's War Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, I'm General Biography reminding you to keep marching toward victory.